And,
Oh,
Peter is not
Thanks for everything. I'll be
with us
back. No worries.
today. So Rachel, do you want to be the co-secretary?
Yes, thank you, Leah. Can somebody in the background, I can hear a lot of noise. Is that you, Leah, or is that somebody else?
That might be me.
Okay.
I'm in a cubicle, and so
Okay,
a lot of
that's
people
fine.
come in and out of the office, but I will mute myself when I'm not.
No worries. Thank you so much. I am new to running this meeting, so bear with me with my Robert's rules. Leah is going to help me whenever possible. I'm going to begin with the opening that Peter provided me with. He did provide.
Sorry, Rachel, before you do that, can you request a motion for you to be chair pro tem?
Oh, right. Yes. Thank you, Leah. I'm gonna need some help. I would like to request a motion for me to be able to chair the meeting today.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Okay, now that I'm chair, yeah,
Roll call vote.
a roll call vote. Tim Brain,
I'm here. Aye, sorry.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye, and thank you.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
and was
Matt Fee.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
There he is. Yep.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now you can start
All
what you're about to do.
right. I appreciate everyone's help today, and Peter's notes that he left are fantastic. So, good morning. This meeting's being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all devices and phones. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion of an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There is to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. In the interest of efficient use of our time, please speak through the chair. To be recognized for making public comments, use the raise hand feature in Zoom by clicking on the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on the raise hand button. When you finish your comment, please click the lower hand button. It's important for me to note that the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee is not required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input. We view public comment as a privilege, so please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage other speakers or the members of this committee. Thank you very much. Let's see, today we are here for the September 10th, 2024 CRAC meeting at 10 a.m. And I am now actually opening it to public comment, to take public comment on any relevant items not on the agenda, and that you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak on any public comment matters. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment? Okay, I don't see anyone. So we are going to move on to the approval of the minutes, which we do not actually have any minutes today. So that is going to be easy. We do not have minutes to approve. We are going to move on to item number 5, which is to approve September as Climate Change Awareness Month, which is a proclamation between CRAC, Acclimate, and the Select Board. And Leah, would you like me to read the proclamation?
Okay, so if the members want you to read it, that's fine. If not, it is in the packet.
Does anybody feel like I should need to read the proclamation? Or were you able to all read it in your packets? Okay, if nobody would like me to read it, I'd love a motion to approve September as Climate Change Awareness Month. And do I have that motion?
So I'll make the motion.
Okay, I believe I have a motion and a second, and I'll do roll call vote. Gary Beller,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Christy Kickham,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
and Tim Brain.
Aye.
Okay. And moving on to item number 6.
Sorry, Rachel,
Yep.
Will is here from Acclimate, so if you want
Yes.
to open up that for public comment, Will, if you want to say anything, give a little background. I know, I think you said it's the 5th year.
Okay, let me just bring that information up that I was sent.
Rachel, you can just say that there's public comment available on this agenda item, and then if Will wants to speak.
Okay, there is public comment on this agenda item, which is item number 5. And Will, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. My name's Will Kinsella. I'm the chair of Acclimate, and I was going to tell you a little bit about why we should support Climate Change Awareness Month, but I instead want to thank you all for approving of this petition to the Select Board. This is the 5th year in a row that we've partnered with RAC to have the town of Nantucket declare Climate Change Awareness Month as for September. It's certainly not the most important work that CRAC does, but it's probably some of the easiest, as the last vote just reflected. I want to really thank you all. This is a public awareness tool that we do use to raise awareness for both climate change and coastal resilience. We share this kind of this information as well as event information on the Acclimate website. And we use that as well as our social media. You all recently heard from Ava Rollins, who's Acclimate's director of social communications. So you're up to date on some of our social media campaigns. And I'm grateful for CRAC's involvement in that regard. This is Climate Change Awareness Month is one of those tools that we'll use to help build support for the Coastal Resilience Plan, as well as demonstrate the town's recognition of the threats posed by coastal challenges, and further convey the significant efforts of the town and you on the CRAC that you've made to prepare for climate change resilience. So I'd just like to thank you all and really do appreciate your efforts and partnering with Acclimate and making this month somewhat special. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Will. Does anyone have any comments for Will before we move on to item number 6? This is going to be on the select board agenda for Wednesday night. Okay, since there's no comments, thank you again. And we will move on to item number 6. This is the CRAC co-secretary replacement. I am wondering if there's anybody who is willing to, on the committee, step up to be co-secretary. Or if we need a co-secretary, we could alternately simply have one full secretary.
Somebody help me.
Okay. So yes, Tim.
I'm the solo co-secretary.
Right.
Just did my first set of minutes. And I don't have a clue because I haven't heard back from Leah whether they were any good. But I'm willing to try and do it on my own, but I just worry that I've got a lot of travel and stuff coming up and I might just not have the time. So if anybody wants to help and alternate, that would be great.
Thank you, Tim. Leah, did you have a comment?
Just wanted to say, Tim, I received the minutes, but I emailed you back. I can't open them. I'm not sure what format you used, but send them in Word or a PDF.
I sent you a PDF and supposedly a Word. I'm using Pages.
Okay, yeah,
And
pages won't open on my computer.
did
But
you get,
we'll figure it out.
okay,
I
yeah,
can call you after and we can figure it
yeah,
out.
call me and we'll figure it out.
So are you willing to consider being full secretary if we have no volunteers for co-secretary, or would you like us to bring this up at the subsequent meeting when we have more attendees?
Let's bring it up again and see if someone is willing to jump in and help.
Okay,
Not saying I won't, but
right.
it's not a matter of I don't mind doing it. It's just a matter of I don't know if I can handle it time-wise. So
Right. Leah, are you okay with that being the case, since we do have a number of people missing today, that we can,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, that we won't
We'll put it on
ask
the
for a
agenda.
motion?
for-
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay, that's great. We will plan to put it on the next agenda and revisit this. Moving right along to number 7. This is initial thoughts and discussion on updating the zoning bylaw and regulations with coastal resiliency. These were included in your packet. We are looking to hear committee members' early thoughts on integrating the coastal resilience into the planning regulations and the zoning bylaw. So I am curious if anyone who submitted information would like to discuss their thoughts. Am I missing hands, or is just nobody volunteering? Gary Beller, could you please?
I'll make my comment, which is something I said at the last meeting, and I wrote a note to Leah as well. We are fortunate to have a terrific outside firm, Arcadis, that has done this wonderful coastal resilience plan. And as part of the plan, they included the recommendations on a host of subjects. But as Doug pointed out to us, I think a few meetings ago, there's a section there that talks about their recommendations to update the zoning laws. And in that regard, they talked about updating it. They had the minimum things, if we want to get a little more aggressive, and even the most far-reaching ones. And as far as I'm concerned, they're really smart, these folks at Arcadis, and I'm not an expert on this at all. And so I really take their guidance. And so I keep saying, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? They've already given us the roadmap as to what we need to do to update the zoning regulations. I was somewhat disappointed at 2 meetings ago when we had the planning board people here, including Leslie, the head of the planning board, because when we talked about that, she indicated she hadn't looked at these recommendations and hadn't planned to do anything about them. So my suggestion is that we should pass a motion here to recommend, since what we're supposed to be doing is talking to the select board, although we could do it to the planning board. Let's pass a resolution saying we hereby request the select board ask the planning board to put on their agenda the steps that would be necessary, or the analysis that would be needed to start changing the zoning regulations as recommended in the coastal resilience plan. When we mentioned it, Leslie said, well, there's some studies that might have to be done. They haven't done them. So maybe if we can ask the select board to ask the planning board to get going on this, and so maybe the planning board will then do whatever the research is. As you recall, there was something about the flood, we're missing out on some opportunities. We're not keeping up with the state of Massachusetts guidelines. It's silly to me that it's all there in black and white. All we have to do is make sure that the planning board does what they're supposed to be doing, and that is to start paying attention to rising tides and climate change effects. And so I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. you know, we have got that brilliant analysis with their recommendations, and nobody's doing anything about it. And the planning board is supposed to be doing something about it. So let's see how we get them to start moving the activities where it's supposed to be. That's my comment.
Thank you, Gary. That was very helpful. Christy?
Yeah, sorry. I like Gary's idea. For my benefit, I would love, maybe at a subsequent meeting, we could sort of detail what those recommendations are, and allow the committee to maybe make comments or thoughts on what those recommendations are. And that might sort of spur some sort of additional thought or ideas to sort of piggyback on what those recommendations are, seeing as that we are, you know, the local board. But I would like to see a full committee maybe review those in meeting, and then to Gary's point, you know, make a recommendation and push those on as our recommendations.
Thank you, Christy. Doug?
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, and to echo Gary's point, and I think Matt called this out as well in his note. You know, I do think that the low-hanging fruit is for us to review the CRP recommendations in detail and bring them to the attention of Leslie and the rest of the staff in support of the planning group. In that spirit, Christy, I included in my notes the portion of the CRP that directly addresses the zoning changes, the recommended zoning changes, and highlighted the things that, to me at least, looked to be action oriented. So there are specific steps that Arcadis recommended that, by my reckoning as a layperson, make common sense. I think they make sense as I read through them. But again, to Gary's point, I'm no expert. And I think what needs to happen next is for the staff groups, both in support of CRAC as well as in support of the planning group, to go through these and highlight those that can be actioned, call out those that might be particularly problematic or require some other, you know, regulatory changes or what have you, so that we can start making progress against this. There are some other thoughts that came to me out of our conversations with the other board chairs and vice chairs, which I'll come back to later. So I just don't want to lose track of that. But I do think the first step would be to look at the CRP in great detail. And, you know, if it's a good first step, Lee, if it's helpful to you, I could suggest that we as a group put this section of the CRP on an agenda for a CRAC meeting. And let's spend some dedicated time looking at that, because I would wager that even within CRAC, there are members who are not that familiar with that section of the CRP, and it's right there to be reviewed. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Does anyone else have comments? Tim?
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I for one don't understand the zone, what belongs to zoning, what belongs to building well enough to make any comments, which I indicated to Leah. So I was clueless as to coming up with something new. I think this is a good plan. I'd be for it.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question for that, Tim? Are there specific questions that you feel you would need answered?
Well, part of it was what is the province of zoning in terms of regulation? This is like town government 101, I'm sorry to say for me, but what's the province of zoning and what's the province of building department? And you know, I just don't know enough about it myself, and that I can remedy by studying up on it. But and also how the FEMA rules play into it, and what and how restrictive they are. Can we be more restrictive than what FEMA has? I'm not clear on a lot of that.
Leah, do you have a recommendation for the best way to answer some of these questions?
I will write them down and then I can type them up, the answers, and send them around to Crack if that's helpful.
Thank you very much. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll send you some notes I have too.
I do think it sounds like maybe the committee it would be useful for the committee to have a little bit more background on the structure of, you know, planning, building, zoning, and how those entities work within town government and who regulates what. Because I'm sure you're not the only one. If you're not involved in it, it's not clear. Christy, do you have something to add?
I was just gonna ask Leah, when you send that, is there any way you could just send the recommendations from Arcadis, just so we all have it in one spot? Thank you.
Yes, I can definitely do that.
Thank you. Leah, do we need a motion to put that on the subsequent agenda?
So at the end of the agenda, there's
New
topics.
business?
Yeah.
Yep,
Topics
okay.
for subsequent meetings, so.
Yep, okay.
They can follow that.
Okay, thank you. Doug, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to let Christy know the last 6 pages of the packet are that section, the excerpts from the CRP that relates specifically to zoning and land use regulations. And I just found it personally helpful to take it out of its PowerPoint format as Arcadis created it and just put it into more or less a Word document so you can actually read it like a text document. And so I did that for my own benefit, and I figured it might be helpful for others. So if you want to take a look at it now, you can. It's in this week's packet. But maybe what it feels like we're hearing is there would be interest in, let's put this on a upcoming agenda and have people actually have the homework of reading it and come with any questions or comments related specifically to the CRP section on zoning and land use regulations. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. Let's see, are there any
Yeah,
other? Matt?
It's Matt. Yeah,
Mhm.
what I sort of what my impression was that my impression was Leslie was saying, geez, you guys should bring these to us and then we'll think about it. That was kind of what I heard from the meeting that we had. I think so some of this is somewhat going to be I think a political question. And how do we build, and so and I don't have the answer. I've sort of found it's got to be people have to make it their own idea that they want to do something. Otherwise, they're just going to push back against it. So, I think, asking the select board to move forward with this is something we could do. I think Rick Athens, the other question. So anyway, I'm not exactly sure how to move forward on it, but I do feel like it's a bit of a hot potato and I think they're looking for direction. I think the select board is, and it sounds like planning is from us too. I think we could make a recommendation. Maybe we do one more meeting, but I think we could make a recommendation to begin to implement those aspects. And please do so. We recommend this be done and it be, tracked, et cetera, et cetera. So somehow, I'm not sure exactly. That's one. The other is one of the most important things I think Rick Atherton keeps talking about this is sort of a hold harmless or a liability. If people are going to do stuff that really is in the long term, not in their own best interest or their property's best interest, it would be great if the town wasn't responsible for that they would sign something that said, yeah, we know we're building, I'll pick on a pool. We're building a pool and we're building this extensive cellar under this house out on Matticat, for example, fine, it's at your own, it should be at their own risk, and they shouldn't be demanding that we bring them bring them services and bring this and that and the other. Like at some point we have to start getting sign-offs on this stuff, or we'll be in a sheep's pond situation in a lot worse areas. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I believe Doug was next.
Yeah, I'm sorry I keep jumping in here, but
No,
I
it's
feel like there are.
that's great.
Okay. I was going to echo much of what Matt was speaking to. I do think beyond what Arcadis's recommendations are, and there's maybe a dozen, I do think there's a couple other things that we heard pretty loud and clear in the conversations that CRAC had with each of the regulatory boards. And in particular, Matt, I think, your question about is there a right way and a wrong way to go about doing this politically? I asked Dave Iverson that question very directly, and the answer I heard back was work with staff. Get our staff acquainted with what are the recommendations. Let them ask questions. If they need to push back, let them push back. But work with staff at a staff level to the point where the staff then gets comfortable with it, and they can bring it to planning. And as Dave said, and then we can make it our own. So I think we got an answer loud and clear on that very topic, and I think we know what the recipe is, what the roadmap is. Let me just add to that by saying I totally agree with you, Matt, on the hold harmless, limiting the town's liability on future development. And I think there's a couple of things that could be added to the Arcadis recommendations in that spirit. I was thinking about it in just the lingo of it's sort of a buyer beware or a builder beware. Have some kind of acknowledgement from anybody who's proposing development in an at-risk area that they understand and accept the risks that come with it. And those risks are spelled out in the zoning bylaw, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So I'm totally on board with you there. And I think that makes great sense. There was another comment that came from the chair of Concom, Seth Engelborg, who mentioned that he did think it would be wise for the town and county to revisit the whole discussion of road discontinuances. That's not in Arcadis's recommendations, but I do think it's a topic. I understand it's complicated. I know you've had town council look at it and they say it can't be done and it's a whole can of worms. Agreed. I still think it's worthy of revisiting. And is there something else that can be done? Another way to skin that cat? Because I do think we're going to continue to get into the Sheep Pond Road like issues elsewhere on the island if that's not addressed. I would say also that there were two other things I wanted to mention that could be added to the Arcadis list in my mind. And one is the idea of introducing positive incentives into our regulatory framework so that it's not all stick. There's as much carrot as there is stick built into the regulations. And that was called out by Ray Pohl from the HDC. I know you, Matt, you mentioned it in that call. I think there were a couple other people in that meeting that spoke to the same kind of idea. And I do think that's worthy of some level of conversation, maybe at our next CRAC meeting. And then the last one, and I'll shut up at that point, is if you step back from all the different regulatory frameworks that Nantucket builders, developers, homeowners need to wrestle with, I heard pretty loud and clear from a number of different chairs and vice chairs of these regulatory committees that in some cases we have situations where the regulations actually compete with each other and almost contradict each other. And there were a couple of examples that were called out. I won't dwell on them now, but I do think that if we took that mindset with us into this process, there could be an opportunity to make our regulatory framework simpler, not more complicated. Imagine that. So yes, it's a huge can of worms to try to get into the zoning bylaws. If it's going to be difficult, well, let's see if we can come out of the other end with a clearer set of regulations that help to resolve some of the issues between HDC and Concom and zoning and planning, because it does look like it's a bit of a Rubik's Cube. Wouldn't it be great if after all this work, we could end up with a less complex regulatory framework? Sorry for babbling, but that's what I got. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the feedback. Gary Beller.
Thanks, Rachel. I agree with Matt's suggestion which originally came from Rick Atherton some years ago. My recollection is that when that first was made, it was brought to the town meeting and it did not pass. And so what my suggestion is that first we should once again schedule a discussion of that, putting that new rule into effect at one of our upcoming meetings. And to the extent that we hear and decide that, you know, it really does make sense to do, we should then suggest that would allow us to then follow up and ask the select board to make it, if it has to go to town meeting in order to get approved, I think we should go back to town meeting. And so what we'd need the select board to make it one of theirs. So we'd probably have to have a conversation with the select board. I don't know if the select board would agree with our sentiment that we think it's time to put that into effect. And if they did agree with us, of course, they could pose that as a warrant article for even the upcoming 2025 meeting. So when we talk at the end of this meeting about future subjects, I'd like to suggest that we put that as a separate subject so we can review it properly. And if we all are in concurrence, then we can recommend to the select board that they put that on, come up with a separate warrant article for the upcoming town meeting in 2025.
Thank you, Gary. Matt Fee?
Yes, I think, how do I think the hold harmless is fairly complicated. I'm not sure if we could review what Rick did. I think the better way may be for us to recommend that be explored and, you know, and recommend the select board ask their staff and or other staff to do it. And then come back to us with how they're going to do it. Because I think a lot of this, we say we have to do this, and then what we'll get back is, well, we can't because of this, that, and the other, and then it goes away. You know, so I think it's the big picture is what we want to have sort of buy-in for, and then how do we get the details? You know, how do we get the meat put back on the bone? This other set part is we can't direct, like we as a group or individuals, we can't talk to, you know, planning staff and say, gee, staff, here's what you really should be doing. You know, our staff, you know, town staff can talk to town staff, you know, so I think, you know, I agree that that's what Dave said. And geez, once our staff gets it, you know, then they'll make a recommendation to us. But I guess the question is, how do we influence the process so that, you know, the coastal resiliency staff is talking to the planning staff and something is actually happening and coming out? Because if we, you know, we can't lay it on top is all I'm saying. So, and then Leah's got her hand up. So thank you. Should probably give me the right answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Leah?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So I think what Peter and I had talked about is this is going to be an agenda item on for, you know, a number of meetings. And so the intention for this meeting was just to do what we're doing, get all this feedback. And when I go to planning staff, what would be helpful for me is obviously having what's in the CRP, but any other information like what Doug has, you know, had some like 5 other topics to include. So to compile all of that information that CRAC wants to bring forward to the planning staff. And then I can have that conversation with those staff members and see what's the best route. How do we get the ball going, rolling with this?
Thank you, Leah. I do not see any more committee comments, but there is public comment. Has everyone from the committee felt like they have shared? Doug, you have an additional.
Sorry, just one last thing. I
No
was
problem.
curious, Rachel. I was curious, Rachel, on your input. And maybe this is something we should just add to the next agenda because it's a little bit more in the weeds or a little more granular, but it was a whole discussion of flood hazard overlay district. I'm curious about it. I would like to know more about it. And So again, I don't think today is necessarily the day to do that, but I was very keen on learning more about that. So if you could add that to the list of things to talk about next time, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Doug, I can answer a quick question, which is that it was building on and altering a little bit some of the concepts that Arcadis suggested. And then the other piece too was I was looking at the challenges from the last town meeting of coastal resiliency districts, and I was wondering if it was possible to somehow embed some of that language into the flood hazard overlay district. And then I was trying to build in the hold harmless concept as well. So, it was a lot, and one can only hope, right? So, thank you. I'm going to move on to public comment. I believe Deanne Atherton had a comment. Deanne, do you still have a comment?
I do, Rachel. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, this is an excellent discussion, and I just support you wholeheartedly in moving forward as quickly as possible with this. I have a short comment and a question. My short comment is, Rick reminded me he would be very happy to know that you are addressing his article, but he has reminded me many times that that article was developed for him by town council. So it has had legal review by town council. And my recollection is that it was not recommended by either the planning board or the finance committee at the time. Then my question is, my recollection is that one of the first major implementation steps in the coastal resilience plan was for an interdepartmental work group to be formed. And it seems to me this would be the perfect thing to refer to that group. And I just wondered, maybe this is a question for you, Leah, how often does that group meet, and do they meet on a regular basis? Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Leah, would you like to respond?
Yeah, sure, I can. Deanne, yep, that group is underway. We meet once a month. And so we, talk about coastal resiliency stuff, sustainability, what the different departments are working on, grants that they may be applying to so that we're not competing for grants, which is important, which has happened in the past. So yeah, I envision that once CRAC kind of has the bullet point of topics and suggestions for updating the regulations, that can be vetted through the work group as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Are there additional public comments? I do not see any. Thank you for the suggestions. I think we have a lot to talk about when we're discussing upcoming meeting topics from this discussion. And I'm very excited as well to see this becoming an important topic for the CRAC committee and moving forward with zoning. So thank you. Moving right along, number 8 is a status update on the coastal resiliency plan and recommendations by Leah Hill, the coastal resilience coordinator. And I am going to turn this over to Leah to present.
Thanks, Rachel. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So today I'm going to give an update about the recommendations and where the status is for each of them. And I was looking back, I actually gave this about a year ago. So we're, okay. So the first page is, this is the chart that you'll find on page 250 of the coastal resilience plan, and it just has all of the recommendations laid out in table form. Up here is the key. So if you see a piece of paper with a little bit of writing, that means it's in development, which means that, we're thinking about it. We're starting to either write a scope or jot down ideas of what to include in that scope of work. The circle with the arrow, that is underway. So that means that the recommendation has started. And then the check mark means that it's either complete or it's ongoing. So some of these recommendations, like the erosion monitoring program, we can't say that's complete because we keep measuring every month. So that's ongoing. Okay, so for the first one, community outreach on property owner resilience best practices, that is ongoing. That's something that you all have been working on in the last year or so. And I do this as well when I go and speak to different homeowners associations or give different presentations. I actually last week did a coastal resilience kayak tour with RJ Turcotte from the Land and Water Council. And so, that's another way to be able to educate homeowners on different aspects of what they can do on their property to make it more resilient while we're outside. We are starting the updates to the zoning bylaw, so that is I would say it's in development since we're coming up with the different topics of what to include in there. Updates to wetland ordinance and regulations, that's complete. That will go into effect January 1st. Strategic retreat and relocation program, I am finalizing the scope for that, and that will go out to bid, and then hopefully in the next 6 months or so that will be underway. The Coastal Resilience Sustainability Interdepartmental Work Group is what I just spoke about. That is ongoing. Joint staff review of development proposals. So that's ongoing. That happens during the interdepartmental work group meetings. The Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Program, that is complete. That's good for I. The Shoreline Change Monitoring Program, that is ongoing. And I go out once a month and measure. We have about 8 to 10 slots around the island to measure the localized erosion rates. The sediment sourcing and transport study, that is underway. And I think that'll actually be potentially a topic for the next meeting to get an update on that. We just had last week a community outreach event, and it was at the safety facility on Thursday, or no, it was on Wednesday. And so all of the modeling has been completed, and we had big boards where people could put stickers and say, this area is problematic. I think it should get dredged. So that was good engaging. Let's see. So the stormwater management plan has not happened yet, but I spoke to Charles Johnson, who's our stormwater manager for the town, and they are starting to do, or they have been doing, kind of like the baseline data gathering for the plan itself. He envisions in the next year or two to have a full-on stormwater management plan, which is excellent. The sediment budget, that cannot happen until the transport study is finished. Stormwater bylaw assessment and stormwater bylaw and regulation update, those are underway. He has Hazen and Sawyer looking into those and seeing what bylaws can either be updated or added for stormwater. And then update locally adopted sea level rise scenarios. That is, or I guess that'll be ongoing because every 5 years or so they'll update the sea level rise projections. Okay, on to the next page. So this is the downtown section. Steamboat Wharf resilience, that's in development. The Steamship Authority has allocated $1 million to look into resilience planning for the Nantucket terminal. And I'm in close contact with them. So I've met with them a few times over the last couple of months to talk about resiliency. And then the downtown neighborhood flood barrier phase 1 project, so the Easy Street area, that is underway again. It's the CCM grant that we received to bring whatever preferred alternative we decide on to 30% design. For the Natticut section, the Ames Avenue Bridge Resilience, the Natticut Erosion Management Pilot, Ames Avenue Bridge Protection, and the Department of Public Works Facility and Landfill Resilience. That's all in development. For the Ames Ave Bridge, the DPW is waiting to hear back probably in the next couple of weeks. They hired a consultant to look at the structural integrity of the Ames Ave Bridge. So once we get that information back, then we can see, that'll better inform us to see, what we need to do there. The plantings from a few years ago that the town, the Nantucket Conservation Foundation, and the Natticut Conservation Foundation are working. I don't know if any of you have driven out to Natticut and crossed over Ames Ave Bridge and looked off to the left. That area where the stilt house used to be has been building back, so it's great. And then the landfill, I believe they're still looking into the Shadbush area. I know that money for that property did not get allocated at town meeting, but I believe the town is still looking to relocate that since it is at risk for flooding. For Nantucket Harbor and Code 2 section, the Purpose Road raising culvert expansion wave attenuation at Sacagawea Pond. So the wave attenuation aspect of that is underway. Again, I received a SNAP grant to purchase reef balls, which are essentially living breakwaters that provide habitat for oysters. And that project has incorporated, it's kind of the interim project before the CRP recommendation can be implemented, but they'll incorporate reef ball structures to act as a breakwater, and then a living shoreline and removal of the Jersey barrier wall that's currently there, and then it'll get replaced with something else like sheet pile or something like that that doesn't have a large footprint because there's not a lot of area to work with. For that project, I'm the project manager for it, and we are working in close partnership with Mass Audubon, who is the landowner on one of those sites. The Code 2 Erosion Management and Dune Resilience project that is underway. That's with the trustees and the Nantucket Conservation Foundation. And they received a grant to look at 2 spots on Code 2 to see what they're going to do there using some sort of nature-based solution. They are having a community engagement meeting this week, September 12th, and I need to double check the time, so I'll let you know at the end of this meeting, but Jen wanted me to share that information with you all because they'll be seeking public feedback on our project. For the Wisconsin area, the Baxter Road relocation planning, that is underway. And then the last one, North Shore, none of those have been started yet. So I am happy to answer any questions. See that Doug, you have your hands up. Rachel, if it's okay for him to.
I'm sorry, Leah, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Doug, can you just repeat what you last said, Leah?
Oh, I was just saying that Doug has his hand up.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks, Leah. Very helpful. Real quick, you had already sent us an email about this public event, the engagement event. That's from 5:30 to 7, according to your email. I did have a question, Leah, back to, and I just wasn't listening close enough when you were going through it, the Strategic Retreat and Relocation Program 1-4. Could you just remind me what the status of that is?
Yes, so
Thanks.
that's in development. I'm almost finished writing the scope. And so when
Okay.
I'm finished with that, Libby will have to look it over before it can go out to procure.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Doug?
I'm sorry, and I know Gary's got his hand up.
That's okay.
Leah, would there be an opportunity for CRAC to offer any input on that proposal, or is that out of scope for you on that?
So generally that's out of scope. Staff writes the scope and then we circulate it within, internally, and then with town administration. When CRAC gives input, it's generally like when the consultant's hired and they're starting to develop the plan, then that's when CRAC can really give, feedback and input of what they think should be included in it, or, if we forgot something or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Gary?
Thank you. I had the same question that Doug had about Initiative 1-4, the strategic retreat item. But I wonder, is everybody else having the same problem that I am, and hearing what Leah is saying? Leah, there's something about your system when you talk, whether you're talking into your earphones or microphone, that I find it very difficult to hear much of what you're saying. And Rachel said the same thing. Does everybody else have that issue, or is it just me, my old age and hearing?
I'm having the same problem, Gary.
Okay. So Leah, I think you have to figure out a better way to talk into a microphone, because most of us are not able to hear quite clearly exactly what
God.
you're saying. And your
I'm
words are very
sorry.
important to us.
These are new headphones, so they must not be working properly like my old ones.
Right.
I think that is the case. I mean, I can hear you, but it's not crystal clear, and it is a little challenging, and we obviously do want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
And then I think the other piece is, for whatever reason, it's not muting out the background noises, which normally they're muting out anything that's going on in your office as well.
Okay.
So
Yeah, thank you. I'll look into that and get some new ones.
we don't want to miss anything. Thank you.
So the answer to the question about strategic retreat is what? The answer you gave to Doug was what?
I said that I'm finalizing. Can you hear me, or should I yell a little louder? Okay, I'm finalizing the scope right now, and then that will get. Libby will have to read that over and approve it, and then it will go to procurement, which means that it has to go out to bid so that we can hire consultants to help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions pertaining to that agenda item? If not, I will open it to public comment. Are there any public comments on agenda item number 8? I don't see any. So we will move on to agenda item number 9, public outreach ideas and strategies from committee members. Again, Acclimate has generously offered to help CRAC's outreach and education campaign. And we're looking for ideas from committee members to potentially help them move forward with that. Leah, did you have a framework that you were specifically looking for ideas in? I know you were looking for some for the meeting today. Sounds like you didn't get a lot of information, but going forward, are we looking for, regular posts from different people or different groups? I know we've done that in the past. Would you like to re-ask in a different way?
Yeah. So based on our meeting last week, or sorry, not last week, last meeting with Ava, she said that they're looking into getting more funding to be able to, put out content for coastal resiliency, posts or videos or whatever. And so she was wondering, what would we be interested in Acclimate helping us do? I do have a couple posts left from, when I asked all of you to give me information for posting. But moving forward, what else do we want to share with the public and how can Acclimate help us? So I think if we can generate some ideas, like I believe we talked about maybe like a short clips that she could record, different crack members saying different things, educating the public. I think it has to be, easy to understand and short. It can't be too complex and long because we'll lose people. So if we can just generate, a couple ideas that I can pass towards Ava and see if she would be interested in helping with any of them.
Gary?
One of the ideas that came up in that presentation, I think if you recall, she showed us the ability to look at particular areas of the island and what the impact of the rising tides would be over extended periods of time. And so I think it might be of interest if we should pursue that a little bit to see what would she need in order to be able to take suggestions from either homeowners or even civic groups as to what would their neighborhood look like in 2030 or 2035, because that might be something that would interest a number of the civic associations around, besides some smaller groups of homeowners who are concerned about what the rising tides and continued rising water levels will affect them over the years. So we ought to figure out what would she need in order to be able to take suggestions from the public as to what they'd like to look at for their neighborhood.
Thank you, Gary. Is there anyone else? I do have a thought if nobody else has their hand up. Leah, since you just went through the update on CRP recommendations, I wonder if it's worth picking up some of these projects that you've been working on and doing some posts on, this is what we're working on from the CRP. A quick update on, I don't know if you want to do all of them, but some that seem to have more public interest. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, that's a great idea. I have been giving some updates, but I think like a verbal one would be helpful.
Okay. Does anyone else have any ideas? Not right now. So I think what we should do is just, if you have a great idea, feel free to email it to Leah. Maybe even if it's not a great idea, it's an idea, and we'll help her out to work with Acclimate and their generous offer. So we can give Ava something to run with. And moving along, I believe we're on to item number 10, which is new business committee and natural resources department reports. And is there any new business? Leah, go ahead.
So Jen and Sarah, we're going to give an update about the climate change summit, but they're not here today. So maybe we can move that to the next agenda. I did attend it, and it was wonderful. They did a great job. But if they can give a more in-depth one, that'd be great. I already gave an update about the sediment transport study when I did the recommendation, so I'll skip that. But last week I did have planners from Newport, Rhode Island come to the island on Wednesday because they are starting a climate action plan for Quidnet Island, which incorporates Newport, Middletown, and Portsmouth. And so within that climate action plan, they'll be incorporating coastal resiliency recommendations or projects within that. So they wanted to see what we're doing here on Nantucket and how can they bring that information back to the island that they live on. So we went to a number of places around the island. I showed them, Easy Street, explained that project, talked to them about the Land Bank's Resilience Park there. We went to the new rain garden, which is so beautiful. If you haven't gone to it, check it out. It's at the corner of Easton and I always forget that road. Is it
North Beach.
Thank you. So yeah, they really love that and they want to do something like that in Newport as well. And then we met with Holly Backus, the preservation planner for the town, because they have historic structures in Newport as well. I brought them out to Sconset, out to Mattakit, where else did we go? Down to Jetties. So it was great. They learned a lot and they're really grateful to be able to come to the island and see what we're doing, then again, bring that information back to where they live. That's all I have.
Thank you, Leah. Do you have anything else? If not, Christy has his hand up. Okay, Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just actually had a question for Leah. I was curious if the people from Newport brought up their coastal drive. I was there maybe 4 months ago, and they that beautiful coastal drive takes you along the mansions. Definitely will have some issues. I think when I was there, it was even looked like it had already flooded over, but there's a section of houses that if there was a significant storm would get sort of isolated. So I was just curious if they brought that up.
Go ahead, Leah.
They did not bring that one up in particular, but they said that their downtown floods quite often. So they don't have to worry really about erosion there. They have different, sediment type, but they have significant flooding that happens, but they didn't bring up the coastal drive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
Is there anything from Natural Resources or Planning Board or Conservation Commission, any of the other boards people sit on updates? Yes, Tim.
Yeah, just a very brief update on Concom and in particular the SBPF. We're making pretty steady progress on refining the orders of conditions, and it's going to take a few more meetings. We've been scheduling special meetings to deal with it, but it's making progress. I just wanted to report that.
Thank you. Excellent news. Matt?
Yeah, I just reading all the emails about SVPF and and watching online what's going on, et cetera. It just strikes me as how we're going to pay for these projects is a key item that we are just sort of not really getting to. If we had, if that were in place now, the sand would, in that area, the sand would be on it, and we wouldn't be having some of the discussions we're having. The SVPF, wouldn't be saying they can't fund it, and we wouldn't be going back and forth. So I think at some point, what has to go to town meeting is, the approval for this, the funding for it through a betterment. If it doesn't happen, and I'm not just talking SBPF, I'm talking a future, some other project. I think we have to set it up in a way that if people don't do it, that we're able to do it. And so that we need to ensure that it's going to be done and done properly. And then I think some of the angst that we've been experiencing for 10 years would be lessened. And so that's just a comment for us to be thinking about making recommendations on payments or betterments, or asking the planning board or the town or whoever to put those things into place, because that is part of what we're struggling with. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. If there's nothing else, I believe we could go on.
Christy?
Oh, Christy?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, I had met with, a capital committee had met with, Jeff and Vince a few weeks, or maybe 3 weeks ago. Literally an hour after that meeting, I left for a few weeks. So, next meeting, I will sort of, give, any update on that meeting, if there was any questions from the committee. kind of some of the things we discussed, but I might save that for the next meeting.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I just saw one more hand. Gary.
I just to mention, prior to the last meeting, the other committee, I'm on the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers. I asked Leah, and she was very helpful, sending me copies of our first and second quarterly reports, which we made to the select board. And I have since distributed them to all the 15 members of the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers. And the good thing about that is that they come from different parts of the island. There are people from, Brant Point, there are people from Matticat, there are people from Monomoy and other parts of the island. And so I wanted to make sure people were aware of all of the things that we have been doing. And to the extent that they have a chance to go over them, they can get back to us with questions. And if I can't answer them, I'm sure we'll lean on Leah to come and talk to us at one of our future meetings. But I thought I'd just mention that. I think those are helpful reports. We make them to the select board, but not everybody downloads them or gets to see them. And I thought it was helpful to broaden the knowledge of different groups around the island of all the stuff we've been doing for the last few years, especially the last few quarters. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. That's very helpful. Anything else? Okay, moving on to number 10, new business, or I'm sorry, discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. I believe we do have some topics for upcoming meetings. Should we start with dates? Leah, do you have any comments on dates, concerns?
Yep, so the next meeting is September 24th.
Okay,
I took a couple notes about topics, so if I can read those off, and then if I missed anything, please let me know. So hold harmless agreement, questions or comments specific to zoning regulations, learning more about the flood hazard overlay district, and then learning more about some background on building and zoning and who regulates what. Did I miss anything else? Doug has his hand up.
I think Doug has a comment.
Yeah, Leah, I to your list, I would just add, let's spend some time actually reading through and asking questions about the Arcadis recommendations.
Okay.
Specifically for zoning and land use regulations. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug.
And I couldn't quite understand what you were saying, Leah. Did you also mention that at the next meeting, we ought to talk about the hold harmless that we were talking about earlier this meeting?
Yeah, that was on the list.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm not sure if all of this will happen during one meeting, but if I have, the topics, Peter and I can figure out which ones can happen for the next meeting, and then subsequent meetings after that.
I'm interested in the fact that Diane Atherton mentioned that Rick had told her that town council had actually reviewed the warrant article that was not approved at the annual town meetings several years ago. And perhaps if we have that on the agenda, say for the next meeting, I wonder if Leah could perhaps talk to the people on, was it the planning board? I think she mentioned that that at the last meeting, when it went to the voters, at the last time it went to the vote, not the last meeting, but the last time that it did go to the voters, it was not approved, but not all of the town committees were in favor of it. So we should know which town committees were not in favor of it. And if it was like the planning board, perhaps Leah could talk to Dave Iverson or somebody to see if he could remember what it was that prevented them, whether it was the planning board or the finance committee, what it was that prevented them from making a positive recommendation to that article, which was recommended by the select board.
Thank you, Gary. Tim, did you have a comment?
No.
Okay. I have two thoughts. One is, would it be possible to see that article that has been referenced repeatedly today from Rick Atherton? That would be helpful. I'm not sure if there's an easy way to find that, Leah.
It should be online. Does anybody know which year it was?
I'm sure Rick will provide it to us in a split second. So just ask Rick, we can ask Rick or Diane to send it to Leah. Somebody
Yeah,
wanted to make that request, and they will do so.
That'd be helpful, or if you just let me know which year, and then I can go back and look it up.
Okay.
That would be great. We can work on coordinating that. Deanne? I know it's not
Yes.
public comment time, but let's show this specifically applies to
Thank
you.
Thank you, Rachel. Point of information. I will convey this to Rick, that you would be interested in seeing. He's a great record keeper, and I'm sure he has complete documentation of the article, maybe recommendations from the planning board and the finance committee. And just, I didn't want you to misunderstand, but the article was submitted. Rick was on the board at the time, but the article was submitted by him as an individual. I don't believe, Gary, it was recommended by the full select board. But again, I'll ask Rick to provide you with all that information.
Great.
Thank you very much, Deanne. Be very helpful.
You're welcome.
I think the one thing I wanted to propose as a additional topic for a future meeting, and this is a question for Matt, is there a way you would like to bring back the potential funding mechanisms for some of this work wrapped into an update from Christy at a future meeting?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm not sure, exactly how I want to bring it back. I just think that it is I'm trying to look at the big picture, and it's something that seems to keep coming back as, it's a concern of the Washington Street neighbors. It's a concern of, of us out at everywhere. Matticat, I met with Matticat Smith's Point group this summer, and one of the big things is, how can we pay for this? We can't afford all this. Who's going to pay? And I just think that it'll stall us on a lot of the work we want to do if we don't figure out how we're going to do it. So I'm not sure how we do that, but I just keep bringing it up so that we can maybe figure out how to get there.
I understand. Thank you. Leah, do you have any thoughts on that?
So it's actually a goal within the select board strategic plan is to incorporate the coastal resilience projects into capital funding. So I am working on generating, different ideas, and it would be helpful to hear from you all as well, of how we can create, sustaining funding for coastal resilience projects. It's unfortunate that the home rule petition didn't pass, because that would have, the coastal resilience districts, that was a whole funding model on how to pay for these things. So yeah, I think we kind of just gotta put our heads together and figure out different options.
Well, it sounds like maybe we could we could have a discussion and maybe provide some additional ideas to you and or make a recommendation to the select board. I see Gary's hand is up.
Yes, Richard, question that I don't have the answer to. It's just really a question. Leah mentioned coastal resilience districts again. And I know that at the last town meeting, there were two different coastal resilience districts proposals, one of which passed and one of which was not passed. And right, one was passed and one was not passed. And my question is, to the extent that one was passed, does that give us any flexibility to start denominating areas as CRDs? Because I'm a little confused. Maybe I need to do some homework or to have someone show me the two different things that were, one went to the town meeting and wasn't approved, but I think the other one, I don't know, went to the voters election. I can't remember, but I know one was passed and one was not passed. And my real question is, with respect to the one that was passed, does that give us any opportunity to use them for betterment type of activities?
Leah? Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Rachel. Gary, I can send you the differences between the two. Again, what did get passed was the bylaw. And so that allows us to map the districts, and then through the betterment system that we currently have, then that will be able to pay for the projects. The betterments have to go to town meeting to get approved. So yes, Vince is working on kind of developing the protocol on how to actually map these areas and give examples. And then the select board would be able to map the coastal resilience districts.
Well, that's good. That sounds like we have the opportunity. I mean, when there are some specific projects under the bylaw, we could say this is now a CRD. And to the extent that there is a funding need, that would have to be put on the agenda for one of the upcoming ATMs. Yeah, for betterments, yeah.
Thank you, Gary. I don't know that we came up with a conclusive answer to whether or not that should be on the next agenda, but maybe a portion of it, Leah, perhaps you and Peter could discuss that, whether or not it's worth having the coastal resiliency districts, the development update, or again, brainstorming some different funding mechanisms for you. Those are two opportunities, but ultimately up to you. I mean, it's too much to do all of it, so picking out something reasonable would be great. Doug?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if you guys remember, but several meetings ago, I think I confused a lot of people when I brought up the opportunity of using CRDs in the context of zoning regulation updates. But if you don't remember, the point I was trying to make was, at least now the select board has the ability to identify maps. And to me, that answered one challenge that I heard from at least one, if not more, of the chairs. It might have been with the ZBA or with planning, I can't remember which, where they said it's really important that any changes that you want to recommend in terms of zoning and land use regulations are geo-specific, meaning they are mapped. And all I was trying to suggest was the CRDs could be a helpful tool in making progress with zoning regulations, because now we have a new way of adding a layer to the maps, if you will. So in a roundabout way, I know everyone here was talking about CRDs as relates to funding. I do think CRDs could be part of the discussions around zoning and land use regulation updates, because it enables the town to identify new zones, if you will, within the zoning bylaws. I do think there is a best case scenario whereby we could create CRDs that layer in and combine lots of different regulatory ingredients. And I recall one conversation with regard to how much impervious should be allowed in a certain area. Another from the HDC related to maximum height regulations on structures. And it feels like there's an opportunity here. I don't know quite how it would work, but I do believe there could be an advantage to the community by bringing together lots of these almost conflicting or competing regulations and aligning them by using the CRD approach. That sounds, I know it sounds very convoluted right now, and I'm not suggesting that I know enough to make it work, but that's all. I was just saying there is a power to map things that didn't pre-exist with the CRD, and maybe that could be useful for the zoning discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Matt, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just sort of a little bit off topic, but kind of not. At the bottom of your screen, there's AI Companion. And I looked up what that was online after I saw it last week on a meeting I was on with the select board. It does summaries. It may even get to the minutes level. And so I just looked at it, and it has to be done by the host. But there may be a way to have this, this AI is changing very quickly. There may be a way, since we're on Zoom, for this to do that. Anyway, so that's just a comment. Thanks.
We got Tim an assistant.
Thanks, Matt.
Maybe I don't know anything. I'm the absolute worst person at technology. I'm terrible. You know, I can't even get my emails to put the right dates into my calendars and stuff. I'm a mess, but I do think it's pretty amazing. So maybe someone who's a little more savvy than me could figure it out. Thanks.
Quick note, at the top of my screen, it says this meeting is being transcribed for AI Companion. So I'm not sure what that.
I just accepted it when Matt asked me to, so we'll see what it does.
I'm liking this.
And I think it'll do a full transcription, but it might also, you may be able to ask it to do a bullet point, or you can give it I think if there's a way to get it to do less and to do minutes and things, perhaps potentially too.
I think Doug has something to add to that. Thank you, Matt.
Matt, great point. You brought it to mind. Tim, I wanted to suggest you might want to play around with what either a ChatGPT or this AI assistant might be able to do for you, just in terms of creating a draft. You know, it doesn't have to be the final. Then you've got something you can read and say, no, that's not exactly how it went. And you can tweak it any way you want. And I do believe you're right, Matt. You can probably figure out a way to make it as, summarized as you want it to be, as opposed to, tell it that you want it in 500 words or less or something like that. And it can adjust that way. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. I think that is perhaps bringing us to a close. Doug, your hand is still raised, just double checking. Okay, great. Bringing us to a close, and I would like to have a motion to adjourn unless somebody else.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Second.
Thank you, Doug. All right, thank you everyone for their time today. And
Rachel, you'll just have to do a roll call vote.
Right, I keep forgetting that. Roll call vote. Tim Crane.
Aye.
Gary Beller.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Leah, is there anything else?
Just you need to say aye to it, then you're done.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel.
Nice
Have a
job.
great
Thank
day.
you. Nice job, Rachel.